Hello my quilting friends! Leah Day here with a new video for the Machine Quilting Block Party. Today we're piecing our 6th block in this block party. That means we are halfway done officially with this quilt. And this is another Dresden plate. I call it a Dainty Dresden Plate because it has 16 petals and they're all pointy petals. So this is going to be really fast to put together. So let's get started first, turning those edges and then piecing our plate together. The first step to creating your Dresden plate is to create your cutting template so you can cut out your Dresden plate petals. And I know these look a lot like tumbler shapes, but we're gonna stitch across the top to make them pointy petals for our Dresden plate. So this template can be found on page 6 of the quilt pattern. Just print it out onto freezer paper, double it, and cut it out. You can find another video on creating your cutting template, and that's going to guide you through that process. You can also use template number 5 from the Dresden plate template set. This will cut a million Dresdens for you, plus you can use it, because I've etched these lines, you can also use it for ruler foot quilting on your home machine, so it's really handy. So once you get your shapes cut out, and you're going to need 8 fabric A and 8 fabric C shapes, you're going to take them and fold them in half, just like this. I like to fold them in half, and you can take it to your pressing board and use your iron to press a nice crease in it. It's totally up to you. I'm just going to finger crease this over. So press all of them in half, just like this. We're going to take them to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch 1/4 inch from this widest edge. So I'm here at my machine, I folded this in half, and I'm going to feed the folded edge into the machine first. I'm going to take 3 stitches, then I'm going to back stitch, and that just reinforces the Dresden plate. This is going to be the point of the Dresden plate right there, so that's why I like to do that back stitching. I'm going to feed the next one in, and I'm just going to run through a chain of all of these at once. There's 16 petals here, so it takes a little while to do this stitching, but it's going to really pay off. It's going to be such a pretty Dresden when we get them all finished. So I trimmed down the fabric just a little bit at this fold to reduce some bulk, and then I finger press that seam open. Just give it a good finger press, and then turn the whole thing right side out. So it turns it right side out, and you can kind of play with it a little bit to get it nice and pointy. I just got this new point turner from Quilty, so I might as well give it a try. You can see I can just use that. It's kind of a blunted point here. Just poke at it a little bit, and that creates a really nice crease. And then this is a really important step. You see I have the center crease line from when I folded the Dresden plate in half. I want to make sure to line up that seam line so that it runs right along that crease line. That way I'm sure that my point's not going to become wonky and kind of a little asymmetrical. I really want it to be nice and symmetrical all the way to the end. So then I'll grab my iron and give it a quick press, and that's how you turn all of the petals for this Dainty Dresden plate. We're ready to start piecing our petals together, and you want to make stacks of 2, always with the same color on the bottom, same color on the top. So I am piecing with fabric C on the bottom and fabric A on top. And the reason is if you get something flipped around the wrong way, it won't end up going together and looking like the Dresden plate in the pattern. Trust me, I've had to do some ripping, so that's how I figured it out. Always have the same color on the top and bottom, and it'll go together really easy. So I'm just going to buzz through these. I'm making sure to line up that top folded edge. And probably something I just forgot as I was talking, you want to back stitch on this as well. So you started stitching, take about 3 stitches and then back stitch 3 stitches. And that's just going to ensure that the outer edge of the Dresden is really nice and secure. It's not the end of the world if you forget about it. Like I forgot about it on that first set of petals. I'm not going to go and add more stitching or something. Just watch out for it and try and remember to do that, because it really does help to make the Dresden plates a little bit more secure on that outer edge. So I pieced my petals together to create this 1/4 Dresden plate shape, and now I'm going to place my ruler on top of it and just check that the edges of the petals are square. So I'm lining up that 45-degree line with the center seam line of that Dresden plate shape. And I'm just checking that these sides are as close to those straight lines of the ruler as possible. Nudge it down just a little bit. And if you need to, you can trim this square. I'm just going to trim just a little bit off here from this side. It's like a little bit of fuzz. Very, very little to trim off. And just a little bit from that side too. And what this does, it's not very much trimming, and it's not a very, big step. You could skip it if you wanted to. But what this does is it guarantees that this quarter Dresden plate shape is exactly 90 degrees here. And this is going to help it go together with the other shapes to create our finished Dresden plate. So here I'm going to grab the other shapes I've already trimmed and arrange them around in a circle. So the next step is to piece this together in sets of 2. So I'm going to piece those 2 units together and these 2 units together, and then piece the 2 halves together. And with each seam, I'm going to align this outer folded edge and stitch to the inside. And the reason I do that is it ensures that this folded edge lines up nicely and it looks great along the outer edge. And it also, this is not really important for this to look good because we're going to be covering up the center area with our center circle. So let's get our Dresden plate stitched together, and then I'll show you how to place it on the background next. So the next step is to piece your block background, and you can find details on doing this in your quilt pattern. I also pressed the background in half lengthwise and widthwise so that way I would create crease lines, and that's how I lined up my Dresden plate right in the center. And then now I'm just going through and securing this down. You have a lot of choices when it comes to securing it. You could pin it. You could stitch with water-soluble thread, you could stitch by hand, you could stitch by machine. I like to glue it down, and mostly because I find it fast, it's quick, it's easy, and then I have lots of choices and options for stitching it. I could hand applique, I could machine stitch. It's really completely up to me at that point. So to use this glue, this is basically Elmer's glue, and it's in a small glue bottle with a fine glue tip. And here, let me zoom in so you can see how much glue I'm adding to these petals. So I'm just adding a very thin line of glue with this glue bottle, and it's very, very thin amount. And I just work about 2 petals at a time, then smooth it down onto the quilt block and give it a press. And what this does is it heat sets the glue so it dries, and then it's going to hold in place securely. Now, I get a lot of questions about using stuff like Elmer's glue in my quilts, and I think it's perfectly safe. Elmer's glue is essentially liquid starch, and it's going to wash out of your quilt completely after it's done, after you wash it. So it holds in place securely, but temporarily. And, kids eat it. I think it's a-okay. I know that's kind of a silly reason to say, hey, it's fine, kids eat it. But, it's really not that big of a deal, and I don't think that it would ever damage your quilts. It is important to use a very small amount, just simply because you don't want it getting goopy and, making the quilt super stiff. We don't want that. So just work a little bit at a time, putting on the smallest amount possible, then heat set it with your iron. So I'm going to work my way around this Dresden plate, gluing it down, and then I'll top the center with the center circle. And you can find another video on how to turn these edges and make a perfect circle applique. So once you get all of these layers secure and glued together or pinned in place, whichever your choice, the next step, the last step of this block, is to stitch it down securely. So we're going to take it to the machine and do some stitching next. So I've decided to stitch down this folded edge with just a straight stitch on my machine. And I'm using my normal patchwork foot, and it has kind of a little groove on the inside here that I'm just lining up with that folded edge, and I'm just stitching straight down right along it. Now I'm using green thread that matches in with these green petals, and it is going to contrast and show up pretty sharply on these purple petals. And there's not much I can do about that unless I wanted to stop and break thread with every single petal. And I'm not really in the mood to do that today. So it's up to you. If you like this straight stitch but you want matching thread, you could break thread with each petal shape and just tie off and bury those thread tails on the back of the block. That's definitely open to you. But I think actually this looks kind of funky, you know, it kind of brings those two colors together. So I think it looks good. So things to keep in mind, I have glued this down so it is nice and smooth and flat to my block background. But if you have penned in place, you might have, it might have a tendency to lift up or wrinkle on you. So just watch out for that. Just always be mindful of keeping the Dresden plate very flat because you really want it to stitch down onto the black background completely flat, so that way, you know, as you quilt your block, you're not fighting any puckers or pleats or anything created from the block not being flat to start with. So I'm just going to continue stitching all the way around the Dresden plate. I also secured the center using blue thread. I think that turned out great. So that's it for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed learning how to piece this dainty Dresden plate with me today. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments below. I really will respond to your questions and help you out. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with your friends and subscribe to my channel on YouTube so you don't miss out on the next video coming out soon. Until next time, let's go quilt.